This is episode 42. If you are a new viewer, welcome to the podcast. If you haven't subscribed yet, click the little red button below and subscribe to the channel. That way you will be notified anytime I post a video, which is normally on Saturdays. If you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for coming back week after week and putting up with me and my struggling with video editing. So, a little bit of administrative stuff before we get started. I don't know if you noticed this week or not, a couple of videos went up. One was a tutorial, and actually there was two tutorials as well as my Saturday video that went up this week. What I have done is created a playlist. Now what a playlist is, if you look below here, you'll see where it says Katrina's Creations Knitting Podcast. If you click on that, another window will pop open that will say videos and it'll say playlists. If you click the playlist, all of the tutorials that I've done are showing up there. So from here on out, anytime I'm going to do a tutorial, I'm going to post them separately as well as in the video, so that if anybody would want to go back and look at a reference, they don't have to watch the entire episode. They could go right to the portion where the instruction is at. I just thought it would be a little more user-friendly and maybe make things just easier if you just want to look at a portion without watching the whole thing. So that's it for the administration stuff. And if you have any ideas that you would like me to share for a tutorial, leave a comment down below, and we'll go from there. I have someone has already requested something for next week, which is German short rows, and I'm actually going to talk about several different types of short rows. German short rows are just one of the types, so we will be talking about that next week. And this week I had someone ask about a basic tee, like a t-shirt pattern that you could knit, and we're going to talk about a basic sweater construction that you can make without a pattern. And I've made several sweaters this way, and so we'll get into that later on in the podcast. So let's get started with finished objects. I have one finished object for this week, and this is a pattern that is available for free. It's called Mitered Lace Dishcloth. It's a pattern I wrote, and it's available over in Ravelry. Just go in the patterns, type Mitered Lace Dishcloth. It'll pop up and you can download it. This one I did modify a little bit because I only have two sections of lace. I didn't put the third section in right here. I was knitting this while I was in the middle of a meeting, and to be honest, I got busy with the meeting and completely forgot to put the third row of lace in, and I wasn't overly worried. It's a dishcloth, so that's what it looks like. This is Lily's Sugar and Cream. It's 100% cotton. The other yarn that is in here, the solid blue, oh, I don't have the label on here anymore. It was I showed it last week, but these, I've got several dishcloths in this same color, in these same two colors, that I'm putting together for just kind of toss in as little extra presents for my daughter and my daughter-in-law for Christmas. So there's one of them made, and the rest of them, this is what I take in my pocketbook all the time because it's small enough I can just bend it over and tuck it in, and it's not a pattern that I have to really think a whole lot, and thinking is challenging for me sometimes. So this is what I'm working on. I started a second one, and here it is. And these are, I believe these are size 4. In fact, yes, these are size 4 needles. So, just takes 100% cotton, and it uses about 50 grams, maybe a little less, depends on how tight or loose of a knitter you are. So if you have one of these Sugar and Cream, this is the super size, you'll get about 3 dishcloths out of this with a little bit left over. And I'm combining it just because I thought this would be a little boring, and I bought this at my yarn store, and so I'm combining the two. And I do feel something in here. Maybe that's the... Nope, that's the Sugar and Cream ball band. Okay. So that is my take-along knitting that is living in my pocketbook most of the time. The next thing that I have as a work in progress is my banner unfurled pattern. That is also available on Ravelry. It's a $4 pattern. However, if you use the coupon code KC20, you'll get it for, I think it comes out to $3.20 as a download. And I didn't bring the whole pattern up because you all have seen it so many times. This one is one I'm making for my daughter. It is an asymmetrical 3-color shawl with beading. So here it is so far. I know this looks a little puffy and curly right here. That's because it's all wool, and once I block it, and it'll all stretch out. At least I hope so. It should. It has in the past, so I don't see why it wouldn't. You can see my progress keeper right here. This is where I was last week. These are, I think they're size 5, if I remember rightly. I wrote my own pattern. I'm trying to remember what size needle I did these with. I think these are 5s. So this is how far I've gotten since last week. You can see from here up to here. It's a very fast knit. If I was only working on this, I'd have it done in about a week. It's a pretty quick knit. It's easy. It's garter stitch and yarn overs, and I think knit 2 together. That's pretty much all the stitches that are in here, and a knit front and back. So if you can do those stitches, you can make this. It's a very easy, user-friendly pattern, and something that, you know, it's kind of a shawlette type of size. So that is one of the projects. Oh, I guess I should tell you what I'm wearing today. This is my On the Spice Market, and that is by Melanie Berg, and I'm wearing it because it's actually chilly out today. And the funny thing is, if Marissa from the Yarn Shop Girls is watching this podcast, they are some of my subscribers, but I don't know if they actually watch it or not. She made the exact same colors. It was like totally different yarns, but what she made and mine look like twins. They look so much alike. So let me take this off and show it to you. I have shown it before, but it's been a while. So this is my On the Spice Market. And it is super soft. The main body of this is done with Ella Rae Cozy Soft. And it's like a snuggly blanket. It is so very, very soft. Some of the rest of the solid colors are also done with the Ella Rae. And then I have some in here that is this, and I think down here is Knit Fever chromatic yarn. And I actually cut it apart and did the, cut it apart and divided it by the colors and used that for my gradients. So I'm actually going to put this on this way around my shoulders a little bit because my arms are cold. So that is my On the Spice Market. And it feels so good right now. Like I said, it's chilly out. We went from one extreme to the other here in Pennsylvania. It was hot the other week, and I was running the air conditioner, and now it's cold. We've got the windows shut, and it was actually, I don't know if it's still raining. It was raining when I started to film this. So if you hear any pitter-patter in the background, it's because it was raining. So the next project I'm working on is a design shawl. I am on the second color of this. You could do this all in one color if you wanted to. In fact, I think the second copy of this that I make, I'm going to do all in one color. But this one is going to be in 4, possibly 5 different shades of gold. So we started with the beginning. You can see my progress keeper right here. That's where I was last week. So this week I've added this section. And now I'm working into some lace up at the top. So my goal with this is to start with something solid and then gradually open up to full blown lace at the very back, the widest part of the shawl. So it is going to be triangular. It's not asymmetrical. It's basically going to be a right triangle, but you'll be wearing it like this. So that is it so far. And like I said, I have 2 colors in it. The next color, it's just going to continue to get deeper and deeper colors of gold as it goes on. So that is that project. And I have not decided on a name for it yet, so if you would like to submit a name for the shawl, I've had a couple people enter a name already, and I have them written down. But if you suggest a name and I happen to choose that name, you will get a free pattern when I release it. So any ideas for the shawl names, stick that in the comments down below. The last project that I'm working on right now, it's called a Modular Garter sweater. It is by Doreen Marcourt, and it's not a pattern available on Ravelry. You can see the pattern on you can see the picture of the sweater on Ravelry, but it is only available by buying the whole book. So this is from a book that I got out at the library that I work at. And this is a strange construction of a sweater. This top part, it's knit from the top down. So when I'm holding it up on the needles, I'm actually holding the sweater upside down. So this is the right side up, and this is the semi-ugly yarn called Groovy that I got from Knitology that I really didn't care for, but when I'm combining it with this gold, I like it a little bit better. It's kind of more fall kind of colors, and I am hoping to get this done before I go on vacation. So this is the top. See if I can get it close. And then you can see the gold part is where I've been working. Stitch marker here is where I was last week, right here. So it doesn't look like I've done too many rows, but the rows are very, very long. And it is a strange construction. I'm going to hold this up upside down. Remember, you are looking at this upside down. So I'm going to untangle everything so I can show this to you. Here it is upside down. Okay. This is the collar. These gathered bunches here on each side are the sleeves. And this part here, you might think, what is this little wings hanging out over here? Last week I did a tutorial on dishcloth, on making the dishcloth pattern, and I talked about mitered squares. This is a prime example of a mitered square. These edges that are going out right now are actually mitered. You can see it right along here. That's where it forms the miter. These are going to actually form the sides of the sweater. So if you think about it this way, flip it right side up, you'll see what I'm talking about. Here's the yoke of the sweater, and this is the back of the sweater. It will hang down like this. So this gartered or mitered edge will continue into the center of the back of the sweater. So it's a really unique construction that they've done here. And the yarn that this gold is, I bought at Peter Patch's, which is in Central Falls, Rhode Island. It's a warehouse where they sell mill ends, and they sell really, really cheap. In fact, I just got a flyer from them yesterday of their September specials, and I am going there on vacation because the yarn is cheap. I mean, you walk in there and they've got like apple bins full of yarn, and I mean, I'm buying the 100%. They had an advertisement, 100% natural colored cotton, 3,200 yards in a 1 pound. Like, they come in a cone like this for $5. And I want to buy that because I want to experiment with some dyeing on cotton. And I also might get another cone. Now, this is 100% wool. I think it was $8 a pound when I bought it last year. Not sure what the price is this year, but last year it was $8 a pound. And you had to buy it in a 2 pound lot. So I'm going to have lots of yarn, but I'm hoping to get it in a neutral color for the wool and for the cotton, and that way I can experiment with my my food color dyeing of skeins of yarn, and it's not going to cost me a small fortune to do so. The only downfall with the wool, it's 100% wool, it's not like merino wool. This is very it's very rough. It's a rustic yarn. It's not something you're going to want to wear against your skin. So, unless you're wearing a shirt underneath it. Like, if you're making a sweater that's going to go over top of a turtleneck, you'll be fine. But you wouldn't want this up against your skin because it's not a soft. It might be soft maybe once I wash it a little bit, but it's not like merino type of wool, or a superwash. It's a little rough. So when I look at this sweater, it's like I've got, this part is merino, so it's soft. So you go from this, which is nice because this will be up against my face, or not my face, but my neck. So this part is soft. So you go from here to almost a burlap texture. So it's a good thing this is not going to be up against my body. The part that will be up around my neck and stuff is soft. So it will be warm. It's very, I'm not a tight knitter, but because this is heavy, I mean, it is a worsted weight, but it's knitting up really, really dense. It's not tight, but it's knitting very densely. So it's thick. I mean, I don't know how to describe it. It's just, this section is thick and squishy. So it will be very warm. If you're wondering what this odd color is along the edge, you can see there's a light edge right here that's kind of gold colored. I don't know if it shows up better on the other side. It's probably about the same. It's a provisional cast on both of these edges. What a provisional cast on is, and I've never used one before. This is my first sweater with one. But a provisional cast on is basically a crocheted chain stitch that you start knitting off of, so that when you finish, you actually thread your needles back onto these stitches, and you just pull this little tab out right here. If I were to pull this little loop, it would just like undo, just like a chain stitch with crochet, and then those stitches become active again. In other words, you don't have to pick up the stitches. Those stitches you put on your needle, you rip this little string, this little zip tie thing, off it comes, and those stitches become live, and you start knitting again. I think, because this is the edge of the sweater, I haven't read into the pattern far enough yet, but I just am guessing that this is going to get attached as a seam to the front part of the sweater, because this is the side of the back. So, yeah, it should be interesting. It's kind of a fun pattern because it's bits and pieces that all end up connecting at the end. So, yeah, I think this is the back sides of the sweater, and it's going to connect to the front sides of the sweater without having a huge bulky seam. So that's what I think it's there for. We'll find out as we go along. So that is the project I've been working on with that. And if you do any of the patterns, I know a lot of you downloaded the dishcloth pattern, and you also downloaded your banner unfurled. When you finish those patterns, don't forget to post pictures in your projects page of Ravelry. It kind of prompts you through the questions, and one of the things it'll ask is the pattern used. If you put in the pattern name, banner unfurled, or mitered lace dishcloth, your picture of that pattern will show up so everybody else can see it when they look at the pattern itself. So if they go to the banner unfurled pattern, they can click projects and they can see everybody else's, and you can actually go there as well and look and see what everybody else has done that shawl in what colors, and the same with the dishcloth. So don't forget to post your pictures. I would love to be able to see what colors. There's no way I'm going to ever knit this shawl in all the different colors it could be done in. So it's fun to kind of watch what other people have done with it. And the same with the dishcloth. So don't forget to post your pictures, just because it's fun. It's like show and tell, and everybody else can see it. So that is just a fun part that Ravelry has. Plus it gives other people ideas. They might see something you've done and go, oh, that really looks pretty, and you might inspire them with a color palette that they might not have thought of. So the other thing I'm going to share with you today, because I spent the other day finishing up our vacation itinerary. Now our new car, we just bought a Toyota Camry. We haven't figured out what all the buttons do on it yet. Every time something lights up, we have to read they gave us 4 instruction manuals with this car. It's unbelievable. So we went from having a car, and the car my husband and I both had the same car. We both had Toyota Yaris's, and they were like the stripped down version, nothing electric on the car. They had, your windows were a crank to, I did have a CD player and I have an air conditioner, but You know, there's no electric windows, no electric door locks. You know, your seats are not electric, nothing. And in fact, one of my grandsons got into the back seat and he's looking at the crank on the door that puts the window down, and he goes, "Grandma, what's this crank for?" And I said, "Well, that puts the window down." And he's like, "Oh, cool, can I do it?" And the whole way from his house to our house, he was winding up and down the window, totally fascinated with the crank. And I was like, I am feeling so old right now. But anyway, my husband and I are still trying to figure out what all of the buttons do on the car. One of the things the car has is GPS. So at first I thought, well, when I put together the vacation itinerary, I don't need to do the directions. Normally I print out all the MapQuest or Google Maps directions to get to every place we're going to get to, in the order we're going to get to where we're going. I usually print out the directions to whatever restaurant we're going to eat at and how to get back to the hotel. I'd like to say that that always works, but not necessarily. We have this knack for getting lost, and somehow or other we always do it in the dark. Last year we were coming from Maine and we were headed to the edge of, it's called Seekonk, Massachusetts. It's right on the border of Rhode Island and Massachusetts, and that's where it's outside of Providence. That's where we were staying for the night, and I'm reading MapQuest directions. It's like 8 o'clock at night. It's dark. We get off of 95 on the wrong exit because the MapQuest thing was wrong, and it sent us right down in the middle of a area where we were driving by and seeing bars on the windows and going. My husband says, "I think we should lock the doors." And I was like, "I think that's a good idea, and I don't want to have to stop anywhere." Yeah, and in the dark, not knowing where we were going. We could see the bridge we needed to get back to, but in the dark couldn't figure out how to do it. So we got tours of part of Providence that probably nobody has seen for years. So I thought maybe I wouldn't have to do that this year. We would just use the GPS on the car. But we've found that sometimes if there's not a good internet connection, that doesn't work so much. And my husband and I are not real tech savvy when it comes. We don't have smartphones or iPhones or anything like that. We both have track phones. So while I can text and, you know, make telephone calls, and I can only connect to it, I didn't pay for data on this phone. So the only thing I can really do on the internet on my telephone is if I'm someplace where I can connect into their Wi-Fi source or their hotspot, then I can get on the internet. So we decided I should print directions up just, you know, as a backup plan. So I've been doing that all day yesterday, trying to get it all put together. So vacation plans are like, they're chiseled in stone at this point. We're ready to go. But I thought I would share with you something that I take. Like I said, I'm not real phone savvy, so I don't have a phone I could do this on. But I have this little book. I bought it at the dollar store. And I'd like to say this was my idea, but actually a girl that I would go to at knit night, her name's Lisa, she showed me hers, and I thought, oh, that is such a cool idea. So what this is, and you can see this was what I used for going on the spice market last year. I printed a picture out, wrote the pattern. I was able to write down what the quality, you know, what kind of yarn I had, which is here. This was the variegated that I had from, it was chromatic. And then I wrote down what I needed, what the yardage was, and what the fiber content was. And I liked having a little sample of the yarn here, because that way I could see how it really looked. You know, if you put this on your phone, you can't always get the colors right. Where this, I could directly compare it. I could compare the texture. So I have this little cheat book, and this was different patterns. I have not made all these patterns. These are just like some wishing patterns. Or I have books that have these pictures in them. And so I took this with me last year, and I will be taking it with me again this year. Let me see if I can show you. Like I said, some of these patterns that are in here I have in book form. So I just printed out a picture so I could remember what it looked like. And what book I got it out of. Here's some samples. I had some yarn I was trying to match. So I had the fiber content, and then I just taped in samples, just little samples of that yarn. so I could compare the texture and the color to try to match it. So yeah, in fact this yarn here is what I did the Yexa shawl out of. So this is my little sampler book, and it's going with me, and yeah, so I thought I would share that with you just because I thought it was a neat idea, and it's certainly cheap enough at $1 to have something that you can have as a reference book. So I'll be taking that along with me. And I thought I would also share a book this week. I'm going to be following this video up. You'll see at the very end of this video, I'm going to do the tutorial on making a t-shirt, out of knitted material. I don't have any t-shirts out of it. I have sweaters, but the same pattern will work. Oh, I got fluffies in my nose from all the yarn. Anyway, there is a book that is out. It is called Knit Tricks. It's by Rebecca Watt. I checked last night, and this is available. Used copies of it are available on eBay and on Amazon. I think the cheapest I found was $2.50. I don't know if that included shipping or not. But this one is the hardback version. They also make it in paperback. But the thing that's neat about this book is it's a lot of patterns that would work perfect for a beginning knitter, because it's all based on like rectangular shapes or squares, and then you put them together and form the outfit, which is kind of what I'm going to show you in the tutorial. So this outfit in particular is one that ended up in my tub of shame. If you check out the tub of shame, you will see this pattern. It's actually a sleeve with a loop and a sleeve with a loop, and you put your arms through it, and then the loop comes over your head and actually forms the body of the shrug. So they're simple patterns to do. It ended up in the tub of shame because I got my gauge off, but I like this outfit. Look how cute that is. And it's called Bow in the Collar, and it has little ribbon bows on each side. And I just thought that was just really adorable. So going backwards right there. I would probably make it longer waisted, because it's kind of, it's like a short, like a cropped type of tee. But again, these are made, you can kind of see the pattern construction right there. It's a kind of a triangle or a rectangle. So a lot of the patterns, here's another one that's really pretty. Look at the collar on that. So it's all kinds of patterns that are made modular in construction. So it's an easy book. There's lots of things. I forget. I think it says 25 patterns. So there's 25 different things you can make. Here's what the back looks like, so you can see some of the other patterns. Get a little closer. There's some ponchos in here. There's some sleeveless shrugs. There's all kinds of things in here. And like I said, you can just make it out of simple shapes. So it is something to definitely consider and look into. Yeah, if you're not looking for doing something with a whole lot of shape to it. So with that, I am going to do our tutorial, and then I'll be right back to say goodbye. This is a tutorial on a simple pattern for a sweater. You can make it sleeveless, or you can put any length of sleeves on it. It is ideal for a beginning knitter because the pattern's pretty much up to you. It's very easy to build upon. So the first thing you're going to want to do is choose your yarn and your needle size. If this is your very first sweater that you're making, I would recommend worsted weight, and you're going to use probably a size 7 to 8 needle. But you could use it with any type, but that would be the large, a very comfortable one to try to knit your first sweater with. You're going to want to knit a 4x4 swatch in the stitch that you're going to do the sweater in. So if you're going to do the sweater all in garter stitch, you want to do your 4x4 sample in garter stitch. If you're going to do it with a pattern, such as one of the sweaters I'm going to show you is a little shell pattern. It's a little cable, like a little small, it's called yarn over cable. You're going to knit your swatch in this so that you can knit it true to gauge. And then what you're going to do after you knit your 4x4, you're going to use a ruler and you're going to measure how many stitches, especially across, how many stitches does it take to equal 1 inch. You're going to then take and measure your torso. You're going to measure the largest portion of your torso, whether it's the bust or the hips or the waist, your widest point. This is a box. It's not a shaped sweater. It's going to be basically a box sweater. Shaping takes a lot of like decreasing. It's a little bit more advanced. This is a very easy sweater to make for, like I said, for a beginning knitter or for your first attempt. So you're going to measure the largest part of your body. In my case, the bust and the hips are the same. I would like to say I have an hourglass shape, but it's more Michelin Man. It's more like this. So, but anyway, I put together an example. These are not my measurements, but I thought I would do this as an example. You're going to, if you measured your widest circumference, and say it is 40 inches. I think as close as you can see it. So say it is 40 inches. You're going to then divide 40 inches by 2. That will become your front and back. So your front and back are going to be 20 inches each. Then you're going to multiply that by the number of stitches that you determined per inch. So if you found out that your pattern is 5 stitches within an inch, you're going to multiply 5 times the 20. So you're going to know that the front is going to be 100 stitches wide, the back is going to be 100 stitches wide. So that's the formula for figuring it out. Then to begin with, like I said, you're going to start, if you're doing something with a worsted weight, it's more than likely going to be a size 7 or 8 needle. Whatever size needle you're using for the body of your sweater, you want to start out with a needle that is 2 to 3 sizes smaller. Unless you're doing a sweater in garter stitch, if you're doing it in stockinette, which is like this, where it's smooth, if you don't have ribbing at the bottom, your sweater is going to roll. It's not going to lay flat. If it's all in garter stitch, for instance, like this sweater that I am making here, this is, I've shared this with the people in my knitting podcast, but this is a top-down sweater, and the body of it is all garter stitch like this. It doesn't need a hem or a ribbed end because it's not going to roll. But if it's done in anything other than garter stitch, you do need to put ribbing at the bottom or something. It just stabilizes it, gives it a little bit of firmness so that it doesn't like roll up on you. So that said, you're going to want a needle that is 2 to 3 sizes smaller than what you're going to knit the body with. And you're going to cast on the same amount of stitches that you would do the body with, but you're doing a smaller needle, so it will be a little tighter. And you're going to knit a rib stitch. A rib stitch is generally knit, purl. The basic one is knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. And when you come back, you do the same thing so that all of your knit stitches are stacked together, all of your purl stitches are stacked together. It will look, let me show it to you on this sweater. This is just a small rib stitch. It's like what your sock ankle parts would be like up around your leg. It's the stretchy part. That's what a rib stitch does. It is stretchy. That's why you want to use a smaller needle. If you did it in the same size needle as the rest of the body, and I've done that before, so I've learned by mistake. But if you do your ribbing in the same size needle, it tends to be a looser knit, so it bunches up and looks very bulky and clunky. So that's why you do it in a smaller needle. And the reason for that is because you're going knit, purl, you're switching back and forth. The stitches, like I said, are not as tight together as they would be if you're doing a stockinette stitch where you're knitting all the way across or purling all the way across. So just that little bit of change from moving your yarn from the front to the back to form the knitting and the purling stitches can make the stitches a little bit looser. So, like I said, go down 2 to 3 sizes, and you're going to start, you're knitting a rectangle. So, I don't have any samples right now knitted for this, so I've got paper. So, you're going to knit a rectangle. Here's your rectangular sweater. you're going to start at your ribbing stitch, and you can make it as wide as you want. I would make it at least 1.5 inches, so 1.5 inches from the bottom to the top. Then you're going to change to your regular size needles that we're going to use the body with. Knit it all the way up, and then when you get to the top, you're going to once again switch to the smaller needles, and you're going to put about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of ribbing again at the top. This sweater is going to, and I will show you some samples of it, it forms what's called a boat neck sweater. This is not something with a fancy collar or anything. It's just a slashed, it's like a slash where your head goes through. So it's not a fitted collar. If you're more advanced, you can always incorporate that. But for the first sweater, you're not doing any short rows or anything like that. It's just going to be a straight cut across the shoulders. So that's if you're going to make a sweater with sleeves, this is what you want to do. Now, if you want your sweater to be sleeveless, you're going to start at the bottom here, do your rib stitches, then you're going to knit up. When you get to where your sleeves would be, you need to, again, use a tape measure, measure the circumference of your arm all the way around. And again, use the same formula that we started out with. You're going to figure what your circumference is, divide it by 2 for the front and the back, and multiply it by the number of stitches that you determined per inch. But right now you're concerned with this part. So say your circumference of your arm is, say it's 20 inches. Divided by 2 is going to be 10. So 10 inches from what would be the top of the sweater, you are going to start rib stitching right on the edge. So in other words, you might be doing stockinette all the way across, but when you get to the ends on both sides, you're going to do maybe anywhere from 3 to 5 garter stitches all the way up to the top, and then you're going to do your rib stitch across. What this does, it just makes it so your sleeve is finished. Otherwise, you're going to have an end that's going to curl. Okay? So when you have 2 of these, or if you're making the ones with sleeves on your sweater, 2 of this variety, you're going to take both parts, put them right side together, and you're going to stitch in from the wrong side your shoulders. You can make it as short or as wide. If you want a wide open shoulder with just a little bit together at the shoulder seam, it's entirely up to you how wide you make the shoulder seams. You can make it tight, you can make it wide. Like I said, it's your sweater. You can do it however you would like. So if you have done the sleeveless variety, after you attach the shoulders, you're then going to sew from the armpit area down, attaching both of them together, and you're done. You then have your sleeveless sweater. The ribbing at the top finishes the neckline. The ribbing on the sides finishes the arms. So at that point you would be completely done. This, if you are putting sleeves on it, you're not going to sew the sides down yet. You're only going to attach the top parts at the shoulders. Then you're going to lay it down right side up, facing you. You're going to pick up stitches. Like we said, if we're using this formula, and you have determined that your sleeve circumference is 20 inches, you're going to divide it by the 2, so you know it's going to be 10-inch allowance on the front, 10-inch allowance on the back, and again, say you had 5 stitches per inch, you know that that's going to be 50 inches to do the front, 50 stitches to do the front, 50 stitches to do the back, and you want it to be over a 10-inch period, 10-inch area. So when you lay your pattern down where the shoulders are connected, here's a shoulder, here's a shoulder, you're going to want right at that shoulder seam, you're going to measure down, hold up like so you can see it, you're going to measure down from the shoulder seam 10 inches to know where the sleeve is going to end, and I would mark that with just stick a straight pin in it so that you know where it is, and then you're going to pick up 50 stitches to the center and 50 stitches to the end of the other armpit. Then from there, you're going to begin, like I said, you want to pick those stitches up from the right side, otherwise your seam will show up on the wrong side. Where you've picked up the stitches, you'll have a little line, and you don't want that. So you go from the right side, pull the stitches up through the right side. And then you can proceed knitting the sleeves as long as you want, whether you want them just a short sleeve, 3/4 length, or all the way down to your wrist. You can do either. Now, right before you get to your wrist, again, you're going to transfer to the smaller needles, and you are going to do at least 1 inch to 2 inches of rib stitch so that it stays, it just gives you the finished edge. If you know how to do an I-cord bind off, you could do that too, but you want something that's going to keep the sleeves from rolling. Now, that would be the basic sweater. You then would cast off your stitches, and you simply sew underneath, from under the arm and straight down on both sides, and there your sweater is finished. Now, those type of sleeves are going to be boxy looking. They are going to like hang down. If you want them tapered, I've drawn a picture here. If you want them tapered, then you are going to, here's where you would attach at the shoulder seams. Then on each side, as you work your way down the length of the sleeve, you're going to want to knit 2 together at the edge every couple of rows all the way down. And that will taper your sleeve so that it'll be a little bit more fitted. So, that being said, let me show you a couple samples of this sweater that I have done. This sweater's a little rough looking because it's several years old. It has been worn quite a bit. It is 100% wool. I did the top just for a little bit of difference. I did a basket weave pattern in the front. Here's the boat neck collar. I'll hold this up so you can see it. Here's my shoulders. This does, because I'm wider than my shoulders are, it forms a little off the sleeve. My shoulder seams are not at my shoulders. They hang down a little bit. So if I hadn't attached the sleeves, the sweater still would have been like a dropped shoulder. It still would have hung over a little. So here is the general shape of it. Roll back some. Mine is almost more square than it is rectangle because I don't like real long sweaters. I have a short waist. So I'm a short person, so I have a short waist. So this is the main body. You can see that I have ribbed at the top, and I've ribbed at the bottom, right there. And here's where I attached the shoulders. Like I said, you've got about 1 inch of ribbing, but it gives you a nice, let's make this really light. It gives you a nice finished edge right there. Now you can see it well. That's my neck right there. And you have a nice finished edge along the collar. Now in this case, I picked up and made some sleeves on this. You can see where I picked up the sleeves right along the edge. I'm showing it to you on this one because there is a pattern so you can see it. Because I pulled through the front, I don't have a seam showing here. And then I just knitted straight out. I did taper the sleeves a little bit, as you can see, because I didn't want them puffy. And I want to show you also the, if I had picked up from the wrong side the sleeves, this is what you would end up with. See this line across here? Right along here. That's what you don't want showing on the front. So that's why you pick it up from the front, insert the needle through the front, and then pull the stitches through. So this is one example of the sweater. The other one I made, I did change the collar. This does not have a boat neck collar. And I used a shell pattern. And where I get the ideas for these, you could do any kind of pattern you would like I did the basket weave. I used this book, and I've shown it to you before on one of my other episodes. It's a sampler Afghan And let's see if I can get the picture so you can see. It's made of squares, and each square is a different pattern. And I have made a afghan, actually in this exact same color. But inside it has what the different squares are. And I use some of these squares as inspiration for the sweater. So the pattern that I actually picked out of this was this one right here, number 32. It's called Yarn Over Cable. And in order to do that, I used the same formula that I showed you, but I had to check the pattern to see how often the pattern repeats to form the little cables. And it's a 5-stitch repeat. So what I did when I had my little formula that I designed, I had to make sure that my stitches that I came up with for my total had a 5, they were increments by 5, so that I made it just a little bit bigger than what the numbers maybe would have come out just to incorporate the pattern. So this one, again, you can see I joined at the shoulder. It is basically rectangular or square. I'll roll back here so you can see it. There it is. The stitches on the sleeves, I did not put the pattern because it would have made my cables run in 2 different directions, and I just didn't think I'd like that. So I just did straight stockinette stitch. You can see where I joined it. And then there's some ribbing stitch here. The bottom of this one, I actually did not do ribbing stitch. I thought this pattern, with it being cabled, would maybe stand on its own, but it did curl. So I actually used a crochet and did a little lace crochet edge to it. Plus it turned out a little shorter than what I anticipated, and I didn't have enough yarn to do like a rib stitch with it, but I had just enough with crochet to kind of make a loose edge to it. And I liked the edge border to wear with under or over top of a skirt. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful. And I have made the sleeveless form of it that I showed you, but I don't have it any longer because that was done years ago. And I don't tend to wear sleeveless things because I've got bat wings and I don't want everybody to see them, so I like to disguise them in sleeves. So most of my sweaters and shirts and things have sleeves to them. But if you were so blessed that you do not have bat wings, go for the sleeveless. So anyway, I hope that you have found this helpful. And if you aren't a subscriber to my podcast, please click the subscription button below. And thank you for checking out this tutorial. The tutorial was helpful for you. And if, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you have ideas for tutorials, things you'd like me to share, I don't necessarily know how to do them, but I'll do my best to learn and teach them to someone else. Or we'll both learn together. So yeah. I in no way know everything there is to know about knitting. I have not tried, please don't ask me to try brioche or brioche. I have not tried that. I know it's really popular right now, but I don't care for the look of it myself. I mean, some people do, and that's their taste and everything. I haven't seen anything like reach out and grab me and go, yeah, I want to try to do that, because I don't know. I'm more into like the lacy and color work and stuff. Yeah, I've done some color work. But yeah, I have not had the urge to try this brioche that is really hot right now. So that's the one thing, please don't ask me how to do, because I have no clue. I haven't tried it or anything else. I've seen other people do it, but I haven't tried it myself. But knitting's a learning process, and I've been knitting for probably around 20 years, something like that. And I still don't know everything, but we'll learn together. So, like I said, if you have any ideas that you'd like me to try to do a tutorial on, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, and I will see you again next week and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And if you're in the U.S., we have Labor Day on Monday, so happy Labor Day. And I will talk to you next week. Thanks again for tuning in. Bye-bye.